Hey, yo, what's good, everybody? Manny J. Beatty here, and this is Interviews, where we take an inner look at the people, places, and things of our community that make us great. And today, I have one of our greatest community members, the Worcester Youth Poet Laureate, my man, Mr. Adael, Ace the Space God Mejia. Welcome to the show, sir. How you doing?
Hey, what's happening? You know, I'm real good. I'm living life. I'm in a very positive mindset.
Word.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Bro, it's so dope to finally have you here. I think we've been wanting to do this together since, 2020? Like, I think that's when we met, right? It was a couple years ago now.
Since we met.
Yeah,
Let's
literally.
put it that way.
I think the first time I ever did an interview with you was when I was actually producing for Labo News, and you were on that show, and I was just blown away by your intellect, your maturity, just how you speak to the people and how you relate. And how old are you now?
I'm 20 years old, the big 2-0, two decades down.
Yeah, so when I met you, you were just about 18.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as a teenager, just blew my mind, and I was invested in you ever since. So it's great to finally have you here, and we can have this conversation about what got you to where you are today. So tell me a little bit about who Adael / Ace the Space God is.
Well, first, I want to say that I appreciate, the recognition, the belief. They always say, you never know who's watching. You never know who is on the other end of the line, because yeah, sure, you saw me shining, but little did I know was I was being spectated by a star, spectated by somebody that I'd work with a lot, collaborate with a lot, and I think since then we have grown into like a beautiful partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, obviously you had no idea I existed, because back then I was actually behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Doing production and a lot of audio engineering, and we were actually, it was right around, I believe it was when COVID started, right? Because that's when your mom started.
Everybody was locked down. Yep. Yeah. I remember.
yeah. And that's when Labo started doing things remotely again.
Yep.
And so that's how I actually met you, was through Zoom. And yeah, you just, I didn't actually meet you. But I knew of you. I learned of you. And for transparency, listen, I was trying to keep your mom out of this, but let's be real. If it wasn't for your mom, would I even be here where I am today? Big shout out to Luz Mejia. She's an amazing community member, and she actually got my start because she was working for Labo News as a host. Yeah. And that was, I forget what the exact topic was that you came on. But after you came on, I told her how impressed I was, and then she made the introduction, and literally, I've just been following you around the city ever since, seeing some of the amazing things you do. And back then, you weren't yet Worcester Poet Laureate.
No.
Youth Laureate, excuse me.
Just some kid that had some stuff to say.
And you said it, and you made your impact. You really did. You started off with a big footprint. So how'd you get into that, poetry?
Oh, man, that goes way back. Excuse me. That goes way back to when I had short hair and hopes of getting into the Air Force. Oh, wow. I'm talking way back, watching SpongeBob and Patrick on the TV. Yeah, I've always been a writer. Back in Ecuador, my father, he used to... So, let me give a little explanation of that. My father used to live in Ecuador. Still temporarily lives in Ecuador. He bounces back and forth. I call him a nomad. For those who don't know who nomads are, go back to 8th grade history. They'll teach you. But he's like a nomad. He just travels, and at the time, I traveled with him for a little bit, and I didn't know the language too much. I grew up very Americanized. Everybody in my family talks Spanish, but not to me. So yeah,
you don't speak Spanish?
I do now. So I spent time out in Ecuador, and when I first showed up, I was so confused. I didn't really talk to too many people. I'm a quiet kid as is, so you could only imagine how it was for a quiet kid who's in a place that he's not too comfortable, not knowing the language. So he helped me out with just education and stuff while I was out there. And one of his main things was telling me to write stories. He loved when I write stories. I used to find it as punishment because he would always be like, no, write me a story about a superhero, write me a story about a scary story, this, and the other. And I used to be like, man, I hate writing. He used to have me practice my ABCs over and over again. I even came back to America hating English. I failed like all my English classes after he ruined my experience for a whole second until I finally like reflected and I started writing stories again back in like middle school. I want to say 7th grade. And I realized how good I was at it. You know, as a kid, you don't really understand your capabilities. You just say stuff to say it, do stuff to do it, but there's never really like something that goes on in your mind where you're like, I want to be the best. I want to be so good, unless you're like running or, you know, like just kid stuff. But stuff like writing, that's not too much. I didn't put too much thought into it when I was doing
kids,
it.
And you're, like you said, you're just 20 years old.
Yeah.
And my son's actually 18, so I know kids around your age. I mean, cartoons and video games, right? That's what most kids do.
Exactly.
So did you just not have access to it, or your parents were just, you know, making sure that, you know, there was adequate time spent on your education, writing, and creativity?
Honestly, I've always been just a super creative kid. I love me some cartoons and video games. I'm a big I'm an avid cartoon and video gamer. Yeah. But there's a time for everything. And I was just such an active kid that there was always time for something new. I'd always be outside and stuff, but whenever I wasn't outside, I just kind of sit to myself. I love the Goosebumps books. I remember I was like the one elementary school kid who liked Stephen King.
Wow.
That was like my favorite author back in like 5th grade.
So did you develop your own love of reading? Because I know you said your dad, you know, he would make you practice the ABCs and writing and stuff, but was reading something that you, because like, for example, my mom, we used to have to go to bed at like 8 o'clock. Yeah. But we didn't have to go to sleep. We definitely, the only thing we could do was read a book.
Yeah.
Until we fell asleep. And that was the thing. So, I mean, I guess I learned how to read from that. I never picked up the love of reading. That's just me personally. It's just not my thing. How did you discover your love of reading?
I wouldn't say it's a love of reading necessarily. I honestly, I struggle to read. I have really bad eyesight. Not many people know that about me, but my eyesight, I have an oval eye.
Really?
So I see kind of like dimensions are weird to me, and I can't see long distance. So I'm not too much of a fan of reading per se, but I love with all my heart storytelling. Storytelling has always been one of my biggest entertainments. My grandmother, she used to sing me lullabies all the time. She would make up stories. And my mother, she would be the one to read to me every night. That being said, it was my father, though, who definitely disciplined me into reading and writing. Kind of like saying, like, look, you need to be a smart man. My father definitely wasn't the best citizen, a great guy, but not to the governmental laws or anything like that.
Well, I mean, we'll get into it more in a minute, but because you do have a lot of good perspectives on things, especially when it comes to like politics, community, our government, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that's subjective.
Definitely. No, definitely.
The laws, they're definitely subjective, especially when it comes to black and brown people. We got to be real about that.
No, right? That's very true, but
you know what he did? I didn't want to assume.
I was about to say, between the stories of the amount of stuff that he's done in his life, he's now a myth in like Worcester. Really? Everybody just talks about him. Yeah. My sister the other day told me, he was like, I was talking to this guy from Lakeside, and he was like, oh, I think I know your dad. He might have stabbed me back in the day.
Oh.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, he was that kind of.
He was
okay.
Definitely.
All right, so those laws.
Yeah,
we respect those laws.
Not a
we don't
very
want
good
people
person.
being stabbed or hurt in any capacity, right?
So yeah, he was actually. He went to Ecuador. And I guess he found himself. He found his peace. He found something that changed him.
Yeah.
Matured him, I would say. And he wanted to make sure that I was nothing like him, because everybody says I'm everything like him. My laugh is identical to his. The way I joke, the personality is all his. I look exactly like my mother, but I do everything like my father. So he made sure that I was his good qualities. I was his redeeming qualities. And while he was in Ecuador, he actually had a really good, stable job. He was a private school teacher for English, teaching the Spanish kids English.
That's dope.
So
really turned his life around.
Yeah, exactly. And he would have the thing is that he felt lucky, you know. Like I personally haven't been a father, but I could imagine you as a father being told that you'll never see your kids again, and you're used to seeing them in your house, in your bed, going in your car, going to your job with your kid, and then being told that you're never going to see them again. And finally, after miracle after miracle, after trying times, and I'm talking about years of distance, we didn't see each other for, I want to say, 2 years. And that's a lot for really father-son separation.
Bro, I'll tell you, as a father myself, I go sometimes 2 weeks. And it's only because my son is 14 and he's living his life. And, you know, I don't have the access that I had to him. But sometimes I have to go and be like, yo, it's time for me to kidnap you, son, because I'm giving you the freedom, but you know, like, I need you back. So 2 years, bro, I can only imagine how that feels.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and you don't, at least I have the opportunity where I could just go see him whenever I want. I'm really trying to, like, not be a helicopter parent, you know what I'm saying? Like, not hover and let my son grow into who he wants to be. But yeah, man, I couldn't even imagine being told, like, I'm in a whole nother country and I have no legal access at all to my child. That's hard.
No. Actually, before he was even in another country, so I'll be very honest with y'all. He was deported back during the Clinton days, and what happened was he was first in a maximum security prison in, like, Texas, and he had pressure from gangs, and the security guards over there weren't, like, the nicest. Definitely weren't the nicest. He's told me a lot of stories of that place, and basically that's where he was going to spend, if not the rest of his life, the majority of his life.
Wow. And
he had an option. He had an option to just get out of the country legally, and he took it because he couldn't. My dad's been to jail a few times. I've never visited my father in jail. He's never, ever wants me to see him like that.
Right.
To the world, he might act a certain way, but when it comes to me, he's the reason I believe in superheroes. Right. Let's put it that way. So yeah, after feeling like you're never gonna see your soulmate again, you finally figure out a way after all these trying times to see him, and he flew me out there. My mother and father flew me out there. You know, shout out my mother. She's definitely a great supporter of our relationship. He flew me out there, and he taught me a lot, because he never thought that we were going to be able to ride a bike, to swim together, to play ball together. So he made sure within that time that I was little that we lived that. And not only that, but I would return to America a man.
Word.
A little man, obviously.
Yeah, but a man nonetheless. And with that said, we're going to take a quick break. We got so much more to talk about and discover about who Ariel, Ace the Space God, who he... Oh my God. Ariel, Ace the Space God, where he really is. So much more to discover. Finding out where you've been is a big piece of where you're going. So when we come right back on interviews, we'll find out more of where Ariel's going right after this break.